Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music both new and old, and this is a very special review I'm doing today, because I am in the middle of London right now, if you will look around, and, alright, thank you, and as an aside, I am also being taped by my little brother, Sean. Well, he just has the camera on a ledge right now. And yeah, so today there's obviously, this is now our second attempt at doing this review. So there is going to be a lot of, interruptions and all that. And yeah, I got my notes here, so it's not actually straight scripted like I usually do, so sorry for that. But anyway, let's get into my review of Goldie, the Journeyman. So, Goldie is the alias for Clifford Price. So I already reviewed his Timeless album, and you can check out that review. In fact, since I don't really have much of an introduction to this guy, since I already gave my introduction to this guy in my review of Timeless, I'll just quickly go down my thoughts on his discography so far. This one, already reviewed, but it's drum and bass classic, I will say that. Alright, I'm not spoiling my full thoughts on this one quite yet, because I plan on actually reviewing this one in full, just in detail, and preferably in my actual room. But I will say that I do think this album is highly underrated, and it gets a bad reputation that, while I understand, I don't think it really deserves. I feel like this one might be like his apology for Saturn's Return, almost. Because Saturn's Return was a super experimental album, and this one is just super focused on, his banger material. There's just not a lot going on in this EP. I think it's cool, but maybe not really necessary. I don't know if I'd really return to it much. It's cool if you're just looking for the more aggressive side of Goldie. And this one, basically kind of same deal as Ring of Saturn, just lackluster, even though it's kind of under a different name, Roofish Crew, or however you say it. It's really not that, and not that special, just mainly stuff he's already done before. And I've not yet checked out the other album he did under this name, Memoirs of an Afterlife, I think it was called. This one was not bad. It's fine for what it is, but it also says the soundtrack in the title, and it doesn't remotely resemble a soundtrack. But that brings us to here, and I was surprised to hear that this album was happening at all, because Sign Tempest happened all the way back in 2009, and he'd gone quiet for a really long time. And even though his last couple of releases were not the best, I was still interested in hearing what Goldie had to offer on this latest effort here. Hopefully it would be something a little more interesting, I guess. But yeah, so how did it turn out? And the answer is that, honestly, this album completely blew my expectations. This album is not only way better than anything he's done since Saturn's Return, but I think this album may very well be my favorite of 2017 so far. There is a ton to unpack on this album. There are 16 tracks, and I think it's a double album, sort of. With the first 8 tracks and the other 8 tracks. There is so freaking much to unpack that I can just go down each track individually, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'll go down track by track. So first track is Horizons, and this whole album kind of starts out in the same way as Goldie's Timeless album. This first track, Horizons, is kind of like Inner City Life, the section of the title track from Timeless. And it is this track is the one where he says where you hear the name of the album, The Journeyman. I think this track definitely sets the tone for what you're going to get out of this album. There's a lot of like emotional vocal tracks all over this album. But yeah, then the second track is Prism, and that's like straight instrumental one, all electronic, kind of like Saint Angel from Timeless. And you know, even though it is kind of a, like, I guess you would call it a banger track, but it is actually quite melodic and beautiful for what it's worth. I really enjoy this one for what it is. And then after that there's Mountains, and this one's interesting because, I mean, it's kind of like State of Mind from Timeless, but by the same token, it's also like an old school trip hop song as well. Like if you combine that song with like Portishead's Glory Box or something, it's really interesting and really emotional, and it's a big standout for me. And then after that, there's the track Castaway, and this is another really weird one. It's a super like boisterous, jazzy, hip-hop kind of thing, and maybe the problem with this one is just that it feels a little out of place. Like, I think this album, I think it does kind of kill the mood that the album had going up to that point. It still kind of feels jarring anytime it comes up, but I still enjoy it anytime it happens. I think it gives this album some flavor and variety, so I still give it my thumbs up. Alright, then after this, there's the track, The Mirrored River. This is another vocal track, and, you know, it wasn't a huge standout at first, but it became more of a standout because Goldie did something really weird with this song, in that he used the track twice in the same album. There is 2 tracks on this album. You got The Mirrored River and The River Mirrored, and the 2 tracks are exactly the same, except it's a different singer. Like, instrumentally, completely identical. This is a very weird move, but it did, because I don't have my laptop, I was forced to like check them out back to back and like look at separate parts of the songs, and this actually led me to remember the track better. You know, pieces of a dream make no sense to me. So because of that, it actually became one of the more memorable ones. So I guess that ended up with making this track one of the more memorable ones. Then after that, you got the track I Adore You. And this one's not that interesting. I think this is the one with Ulterior Motive on it. It's a nice vocal track, it's catchy, but it's not a huge standout. There's not a lot to talk about for that one. Yeah, then after that there's I Think of You, and that one's kind of another track that's kind of more the experimental Goldie, but it's kind of like the original track Timeless, but not the Inner City Life part like the rest of it, you know, the pressure and all those. So that's a really cool one. That was a big grower. It also has some cool piano sections in it too, so that's a big standout for me. And then after that, there's Truth, and Truth is the end of this first half of this album, and it's a cover of the song of the same title from Saturn's Return, the one that David Bowie sings. And weirdly enough, I prefer this version to the original version from Saturn's Return. Like, I think this version, like, the singer, Jose James, I think was a better fit for this kind of song. Like, it's a lot more soulful, and it's played like a piano ballad sort of thing. And I think I was able to get more feels out of it from this sort of presentation. The original is a lot more ambiguous and weird, but I'll talk about that when I actually review Saturn's Return. Anyway, so that's the first half of The Journeyman, and after that we get into the second half, which is a little slower, but I think the standouts on this half of the album... did you just hit the red button?
No.
So the second half starts with the track Redemption, and this is like this really long, like 17-18 minutes multi-part suite, and just on the merits of being a multi-part suite that's like 18 minutes long, I knew it was going to be a standout already. But, yeah, it doesn't disappoint. You got that first section, which is just kind of your traditional jungle drum and bass thing. You got there's this middle section that...
Got lots and lots of cars.
Taking photos.
We are.
Well, you can start with it. I don't mind. I was just checking you're alright.
Oh yeah, we're fine. We're fine.
Recording a review for YouTube.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you both American?
Yes.
Ah, what part?
Chicago, Illinois.
Very nice. What about you?
Chicago. We're brothers.
Ah, have a lovely night, guys. Take care.
You too.
Police.
Yes, no shit.
Keep that in the review, you should.
Alright, so track redemption, like you got the first part, which is like your old school drum and bass thing, and you got this like this middle section which has these weird bell sounds in it, and I feel like these weird bell sounds I might actually have in my loop library somewhere, but I'm not sure. And then after that, you got like the last section, which is more percussive, more atonal, and it is a really interesting track. Maybe I would have hoped for a little more to it, but I think I think it justifies the 17-18 minutes that it goes on for, and I still give it my thumbs up. So anyway, after that actually though is my favorite track, I think, Tu Tiens Avec Moi, and this track is a cover of a track by the Pat Metheny group, Are You Going With Me? And like it is this long extended jazz thing, and like I'm just a sucker for like these smooth jazzier pieces. And like this track is also special because like it has these harmonicas in it, which kind of remind me of like Stevie Wonder, like Isn't She Lovely, or that kind of thing. And there's also these like airy vocals on it that kind of remind me of like M83, like Hurry Up We're Dreaming, like the stuff Anthony Gonzalez and his falsetto-y stuff. But, yeah, that is a freaking amazing track, probably my favorite on this album, and it leads, like, right into the next one, Ballad, Celeste, and this is, as you would guess, it's, like, kind of a ballad track, but it's pretty electronic, like, it's kind of an odd one. I think it sounds very interesting, but also quite emotional. It was definitely one of my favorites. You know, the treat me like your pillow. This track also has like some kid voice on it, and it might the first track, Horizons, also did this. Like he had the little kid saying, "There goes the journeyman." So it's like maybe Goldie brought on his daughter or something, kind of like BT did that one time. So I guess that's cool. That's definitely a cool thing. And after that, there's This Is Not a Love Song, which is not quite as good as the Ballad Celeste, but it's still welcome. And thankfully has nothing to do with the David Guetta song of the same title. It's like this slow, jazzier thing. It's, it may not be a huge standout, but it's nice to have. I wouldn't skip it. I wouldn't skip any of these, honestly. So after that, there's The River Mirrored, already talked about that one. And, then there's Triangle. That's a really, like, spot-on instrumental track. And, like, this track is interesting because it references You and Me from Timeless. It has that same voice sample from Diane Charlemagne. You and me. I mean, you can tell, like, he brought on these two singers, Natalie Williams and Terry Walker, because, unfortunately, Diane Charlemagne passed away in 2015, so R.I.P., but I think these two singers do a very good job of replacing her, I suppose. I don't know what word to use there. But anyway, after that, there's Tomorrow's Not Today. That's another up-tempo vocal track. Nothing really to report. It's catchy, not a huge standout. And finally, it ends with Run, 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 which is like this like cinematic piano ballad. It works as a finish, but I personally would have picked Truth as the finisher on this album because it got more feels. But that's just me. I think this is a perfectly serviceable ending, and I think it leaves this album out on a good note. And that is all I have to say about individual tracks, and that was a freaking lot. So, final thoughts on this album overall. I think The Journeyman is on par with Timeless and Saturn's Return, honestly. Now, I don't think this album is perfect, though. I do have a couple of nitpicks. For one thing, I think there's a lot of focus on vocal tracks here. There's only like 2 instrumentals, and it does... by the time I get to, like, Tomorrow's Not Today, and like, oh, it's another vocal track, okay. But it doesn't really bother me. I mean, I'm not bored at any point. And, I mean, if you do happen to be bothered by the lack of instrumentals, I mean, Goldie was nice enough to include all the instrumentals of these songs in the second disc of the deluxe edition of the album, if you want to do that. So, yeah. The other nitpick I have is that it's not very original. I feel like a lot of the stuff he did on this album is kind of reliant on my nostalgia for his first 2 albums. And I think he wrote that nostalgia excellently, and that it works really well for what it is, but yeah, I mean, it's not like he's doing anything new. I mean, I guess he hasn't really done the whole piano ballad thing, at least I don't remember. But, I mean, it's not like he invented piano ballads or anything. But, honestly, this was still absolutely fantastic album. I love basically every song on here. And, you know, I probably would recommend it more to someone who already has nostalgia for Goldie's first 2 albums. I think they'll pick up on more references and the like. But, I mean, it's not to say someone who's never listened to Goldie before will not enjoy this album. I think this is a highly enjoyable album from start to finish. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Probably my favorite of 2017 so far. Yeah, just definitely check this one out. And I'm overall feeling an 8.7 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.